All right, let me introduce this gentleman that's going to be talking to you today. This is my father-in-law. This is Lindsay's grandfather, and he served in the Vietnam War. He was actually drafted to serve in Vietnam, so he's going to talk to you today about some of the things he saw. He is not going to talk to you about shooting people or anything like that, so I know in the past he's asked that you guys not ask about that kind of stuff, but he's going to give you his perspective on his time in Vietnam. So if you'd make my father-in-law, this is Mr. Harold Dancy. Welcome today. Give him a round of applause.
Okay. I don't know how much y'all have studied about Vietnam or what you've studied. But like Doug said, I'm not here to tell war stories. Like Johnny Cash's song about the blood and the guts and the beer, we're not going to talk about that. I'm going to share with you some of my experiences. I spent 1 year and 1 day in the province of Vietnam, and so I'm going to share with you some of my experiences. And I won't get into the politics of the war. It was a very unpopular war. They didn't call it a war, it was a conflict, but I'm telling you, I was there, it was a war. All right, that's a map of Vietnam. You have North Vietnam and South Vietnam, and right there was a demilitarized zone that separated the two. I served in the 1st Infantry Division, also known as the Big Red One. This is an insignia for the 1st Infantry Division Association. It's an alumni association based in Fort Riley, Kansas. That it's not a military patch. It's just, a lot of people have it on their vest or on their coat or something like that. The 1st Infantry Division was headquartered in Dian, South Vietnam. Spelt D-I-A-N. And if you look at that, you see a lot of tents, a few buildings, glorified chicken houses, if you will. But that was the headquarters for the 1st Infantry Division. Spent very little time there. This is a chaplain. I served as a chaplain's assistant in Vietnam. Now you ask me, what does a chaplain's assistant do? Well, first of all, they don't preach. But our job is to assist the chaplain in whatever means that he needs to meet the spiritual needs of the troops. Second function is to be his bodyguard. According to the Geneva Convention, which we subscribe to, the chaplain is not allowed to carry arms. So I carried an M16 rifle for myself, and in case he needed it, I carried a Colt 45, not a revolver, but an automatic pistol, in case the chaplain ever needed it. This chaplain right here, I served with him 1 day. I came in 1 day and he left the next. I don't even remember his name. I didn't get to know him, I just took his picture. This little girl right here, she was a Vietnamese national. Her name was Ching, spelled T-H-R-I-N-G. And you can see how she's dressed. And you see how this little doll is dressed. This is all silk. They wore silk. Silk to them is like polyester is to us. This is called an Audi. This thing gets tired every once in a while, it won't work.
We got some kids like that, Harold.
This girl right here is also a Vietnamese national. Her name was Choo Choo. C-H-O-O, C-H-O-O, Choo Choo. I don't know what her real name was, but that's what she went by, Choo Choo. She did housekeeping and cleaning work. This is another picture of Ching standing in the front of the chaplain's office. Nice office, isn't it? There's another shot of the chaplain's office. This is right in front of the chaplain's office. There's bushes and that flag is in the middle of a Buddhist grave. We put that flag up there because we basically thought it'd be a good place to put it. I'll tell you a story about that flag later on. I'll show you that grave again. This is a fishing boat known as a sampan. See right there, it says 2/18, 2nd Battalion, 18th Infantry of the 2nd Brigade, the 1st Infantry Division, get it all in there. Captured this out in the Mekong Delta and brought it back and cleaned it up, painted it up, put it out there on display. This is a Huey gunship. If you look at this thing, you see right there and right there, those are 20mm cannons. There's a 20mm cannon. And then out each side was M60 machine guns. So that was equipped with a pilot, a co-pilot, and 2 gunners. And they would support us while we were in combat. And then also, if transport if needed. This is inside one of those regular helicopters. We've got everywhere we went with helicopters. We went in lifts of 5. There were 5 helicopters in the lift, 5 soldiers on each helicopter. 3 sitting in a jump seat across the back, 1 on the left, 1 on the right with your feet hanging out the door, and we didn't have seat belts. And I took this, and we were in the middle, 3rd helicopter. You can see 1, but there's none in front. This is the starting of Operation Junction City, the first operation I went on. And we were on the 3rd helicopter of the 1st lift. This is Chinook helicopter. It'll hold 50 fully equipped combat soldiers or a 2.5-ton truck fully loaded. The back of it opens up. This is one I took with a helicopter flying along the sides. Had to be careful. When we were over Vietnam, keep in mind, we're in a combat zone, they're firing artillery all over the place, and we'd be flying along, all of a sudden we go, phew, like you're gonna crash. Well, we get notified they're firing artillery this way, so you had to be out of the range of the artillery. So maybe we go up. So it wasn't a real smooth ride. Somebody asked me, was there ever a helicopter crash? Yep, 1 time. But I was lucky. We were coming back into base camp, and they would set up on our perimeter, and we'd come back, and they'd take pot shots at us when we'd come back in. And they hit our helicopter coming in one night, and a warrant officer was flying, turned around and says, "Hold on, boys, we're dead in the water." And he flipped that thing on automatic pilot, and the rotors keep going, so you don't just drop. And we landed in the middle of the motor pool in base. And those runners that sit on the bottom of the helicopter, they just spread out like that. But we all walked away, so we didn't, shook our teeth a little bit, but we were okay. This is a French, they call it a palace. I guess it was a palace. It's right outside the Michelin rubber plantation. Anybody know what Michelin's good for? Tires, there you go. The French fought, I don't know how many years the French fought in Vietnam before we went. And they finally just gave up on it and we went. But the Michelin rubber plantation was where Michelin got the rubber to build their tires from. And this is a picture inside the Michelin rubber plantation. And if you look right here, see that bowl? it looked a lot like this right here. It had a wire around it, and it's stuck into the trunk of the tree, and then they took a little piece of pipe about as big as your finger and drove it in enough that it got into the sap of the tree, and then the sap would drip out in that bowl, and as Vietnamese would come by on a regular basis with 5-gallon buckets, and dump that in and take it to the wherever they done the process of rubber. This is Chaplain Jesse Campbell. He's the first chaplain I served with, and I think it was less than 3 weeks that I served with him. He couldn't handle it. He had a nervous breakdown and had to be sent back to the States. He's from Lubbock, Texas. I've tried to contact him, but I've not been able to, so I don't know what happened to him. This is a captured Viet Cong soldier. He's wounded. We got him on a stretcher, and we're interrogating. We always give them whatever medical treatment they needed, but we always tried to interrogate them and find out what was going on. Here's another one. This is the interpreter, and he's got a list of the questions that they wanted to ask him. And most of the time they talk. This is the spoils of war. Right here you see 6 rifles and 6 empty helmets on them. Every soldier in the 1st Infantry Division that lost his life in combat, there was a memorial service held in their honor in his platoon or company. And this is prior to when we'd lost 6 people the night before. This is something that the Army provides that nobody uses. It's a chaplain's kit. If you take all this velvet off of it, there's a big old suitcase in there, and these are heavy candelabras and chalice and cross. Turn that cross around, it becomes a crucifix. And if it's a Jewish chaplain wants to use it, he just takes the cross out of it. Anybody ever been on a military base? He has. She has. And the reason, when you go on a military base, if you look at a chapel, you'll never find a chapel on a military base that has a cross. Anybody want to guess why? Go ahead, don't hurt you to guess.
Jewish.
Because the Jewish use the same building. And so you do the cross, the crucifix, or whatever, on the altar or inside the church. So you'll never find, unless they've changed it in the last 40 years, a cross on a military chapel. If you look right here, you'll see a helicopter. And some soldiers standing there. This is a purple smoke. We had to carry smoke grenades, and different color smoke grenades were to tell what kind of helicopter to land. This was just a purple was to land. Over here is where we were doing some bombing. Here's that same helicopter. This is after a battle we had up in one of the rubber plantations. We lost one soldier that night. And I think, I can't remember, because it's been 40 years, or 50 years. It's been 50 years.
Can you believe you're that old? Can you believe you're getting that old?
I woke up this morning, that's a good thing.
Okay.
But we lost one soldier, and I believe it was 278 Vietnamese regular army we buried in a mass grave that morning. And this is their weapon. They actually took a flying crane, which is a gigantic helicopter, and brought bulldozers out. And we, in the rubber plantations, during the rainy season, they have to drain all you had never seen it rain like it rains over there. They're big trenches all through the rubber plantation. So they took those big old bulldozers and opened up those trenches, and that's where we buried those bodies. And this is the weapons that we captured. I see how skinny I used to be. This is a crater where a 1,000-pound bomb was dropped. This is Chaplain George Leisner. He's the only other chaplain I served with. I was going to tell you about those guns. That night that we had that battle and so many North Vietnamese were killed, that's the only battle that I was in where we were dealing with the North Vietnamese Army. I mean, the khaki uniforms and all that stuff. And I was scared to death. But I did what I needed to do, and I was awarded this Bronze Star for meritorious, not for meritorious, for valor as a result of that night. They said, boy, you were brave. I said, I was brave. I was scared to death. And so I didn't get the bronze. I knew it had been put in for it, but I didn't get it until I got back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and this is where I received this in July of 1968 by General K.L. Reeves, who was the commanding general at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So I was honored to received 2 Bronze Stars, one for valor and one for meritorious service. And this man right here is the one that recommended me for it. Does anybody know what napalm is? Okay, it's a explosive, fire-burning. I mean, it's something else. So when we'd get a chance to set up a perimeter out in the jungle somewhere, we'd take a 55-gallon, they'd bring us 55-gallon drum with napalm in. Envision this as a 55-gallon drum. And we'd dig a hole and bury it in the ground and have it sitting at about a 45-degree angle. Then we'd put a blasting cap in it. And if they started to overrun us, we'd hit the blasting cap. And believe me, they're not going to run through that. This is in the streets of Zion. All the dirt over there is real red. They say it's because there's so much iron in the soil. They call it laterite. It's a real poor grade of iron ore. Not enough iron to harvest from the soil and make steel out of. This is the streets of Saigon. See the Volkswagen Bug? You see them all over the world. Wherever you go, you always find a Bug. This is one of the markets in Saigon. One thing that you'll find in Vietnam, and I've had the privilege of traveling to about 15 different countries. And about every place that you go except the United States, you'll find a market or two. And this is one of the markets. This is on the road outside of Saigon. I don't know what the building was, but it was a big building, some kind of a government building. That was was our makeshift shower. We also, you know, you get tired of taking a bath in that steel helmet. So we got some ammunition boxes, and we found that Australian shower, and we did good there when we was in there for 2 or 3 days. Everybody get to take one bath. First Operation Junction City I went on, the picture that you saw me in front of that 1,000-pound bomb crater, I wore those fatigues for 28 days.
Y'all want to wear the same clothes for 28 days in a row? How many of you want to wear the same clothes 2 days in a row? No.
This is taken in Bung Tao R&R Center. Every soldier, sailor, Marine that was in the country was qualified for 1 free-day R&R in country. R&R stands for rest and relaxation. Only problem is you had to convince your first sergeant or your company commander to let you go. And the second problem was, it was up on the coast and way out of the Iron Triangle where we were at, and you had to get your own transportation. So, but they said that the Vietnamese, North and South, and the Army, and the Air Force, and everybody else went there, and they just peacefully coexisted there in that R&R Center. And it was a resort area, and there was a lot of church. The people over there are very religious. This is a Catholic church right outside of Bung Tao. That's a statue of, they're big old statues over there. That's a statue of Mary, or some people refer to it as Madonna. Fishing's an industry there, and all this white stuff you see is fish nets. And if you look right here, you see this fellow right here, he got his toe stuck in the net, and I don't know what kind of tool that was, but there were men in their nets. Same way he got the same tool right here. See how he got his foot stuck out? They were all men in their nets. They were a real thin nylon material, and so they, after their day of fishing, they come in and they have to fix their nets to get ready to go out the next day. The dominant religion in Vietnam is Buddhist. That is a statue right outside of Bung Tao. I bought this. This is a carving. I call it my little fat buddy. I bought this right outside of the that temple in the gift shop. And they sell these to support that. Now, I wanted to go in, and the whole bottom of this is where they go in and worship. And there's little stations where you go in and take your incense and your little thing, and you burn the incense. So, it didn't cost anything to go in. So I just started trucking on in, and they stopped me. No can do. And they finally got me to understand that I had to take my shoes off. Now, a soldier to give up the combat boots in a combat zone, but I did. I took them off, went in, and sickening. I guess you burn different kinds of incense for different things. Maybe somebody committed this sin, somebody else committed this sin, but when you put it all together, man, it was sick. But anyway, I have been into a Buddhist temple. Don't intend to go back, but it was an experience. This is a Catholic church. Notice the cross. Anybody know what that is?
It's a memorial on top of
All right, speak up so the rest of them
He
can
said,
hear.
hey, say it louder, Elijah.
the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
That's right, that's what's taken in Pearl Harbor. I didn't take that picture. Pearl Harbor's still an active naval base, and they won't let you take cameras. So they have slides that you can buy. How did I get from Vietnam to Pearl Harbor? Just like they give you a 3-day R&R, they give you a 7-day R&R. I was married. I'd been married 6 years. And so I picked Hawaii because my wife could come to Hawaii, and we could scrape up enough money on my $86 a month that I made to get her to Hawaii. The government paid for me to go to Hawaii. And so we went out to Pearl Harbor, and this is looking at the flag. I am proud of that flag. I take pictures of flags everywhere I go. Now, this is just looking out into the bay, standing on the USS Arizona, where the soldiers or sailors are still buried in the sunken vessel. And you see these spots on that's oil still coming up. And when was Pearl Harbor? 1942. And my brother goes to Hawaii about every 2 or 3 years. He's at Pearl Harbor, I believe 2 years ago. He said the oil is still coming up. This is a list of all the sailors that are buried in the USS Arizona. Now, here's what people think of Hawaii. That's Waikiki Beach. Did anybody ever see the reruns of the first Hawaii Five-0? Well, when it come on, Jack Lord was standing on top of the Ilikai Hotel. That's where I stayed on the 26th floor. Yeah, and they wear grass skirts and make legs and do the hula. Back to Vietnam.
So how many days did you stay there? 7?
That's 7 days, so it took about, actually there about 6, I guess.
While you're on Pearl Harbor, the first American soldier killed at Pearl Harbor was from Thomasville.
Is that right?
Yeah, William F. Miller, named the battleship after him, lived right down below Briar Creek School. The day the Japanese, he was the first soldier that was recorded that was killed.
This is a theater. Kids, they love to come to the soldiers. They're begging for anything. The leftovers that we have, peanut butter or jelly or whatever left over from our sea rations, anything that we could give them was better than what they had. You people have never seen poverty. When the group before this asked me how their economy was over there, I said, they didn't have an economy. That's more the same kids. This is probably an upper middle class home that has been converted to some kind of a military something, because there's the antenna. This is a Buddhist cemetery. This is the Mekong River Delta. That sampan I showed you earlier, it came out of that area. Now, remember I talked to you about the Buddhist grave in front of the chaplain's office? Somebody come along and made us take our Christian flag down. So there's the after. Now, after we'd been there a while, they decided that they were, while we were out there fighting and doing things, they had the engineering battalions, and they were building up the base back at Zion, so we supposed to get a 7-day-a-month stand there to come back to base camp and rest and relax and just chill out. Well, we didn't always get that, but they were building barracks for us, and they decided they'd build us a chapel. And this is the beginning of the chapel. That is phase 2 of it. Looks like a chicken house. There's the finished product. Now, anybody ever heard of leprosy?
Yep.
Okay, leprosy still exists today. And in Vietnam, just like if you study the Bible, and I'm not going to get into teaching the Bible, but in Bible teachings, and I guess still in the Middle East, if you have leprosy and you can't come in contact with anybody, you have to say unclean, and you have to walk away from it. Well, in Vietnam, they had a colony close to Zion. It was called the Dancy leprosarium. And to support themselves, they made silk fabric, they made ceramic tiles, and they had a carpenter shop. They made this altar, they made all of these curtains, and they made this ceramic tile in the Dancy leprosarium. This is the first aid station back in base camp. And this is the kind of barracks that they put in to replace the tents that we had back in downtown Saigon. This is the presidential equivalent to our White House. That's equivalent to our Capitol where the House and Senate meets. There's your, we'll just go in. This is a park in downtown Saigon with some kind of memorial. There's a lot of statues all over the place. That's a closer view of it. This is the nastiest, filthiest place I have ever been in my life. You can see the homes are built right on this Mekong River. The feces, garbage, trash, whatever, throw it in the river. Stink, the river is brown, nasty looking, but that's the way the people live. I'm driving this Jeep right here, and these kids are hauling barrels of something. Now let's go to hardware stores.